Hi everyone, welcome to Women in Games. I'm Chaya, I'm the marketing coordinator here at the Multiplayer Group. Today we're going to be talking to you about navigating mental health in the gaming industry with our Level Up partner, Safe in Our World. I'm here with Sarah, Charity Director from Safe in Our World, and Alex, Head of Marketing at the Multiplayer Group. Hi everyone.
Hi.
First question to you both. Tell us a little about who you are, what you do, and a little about your organisation. Sarah, would you like to go first?
Yeah, of course. Hi. Well, as you've just introduced me, I'm Sarah. I'm Charity Director here at Safe in Our World. So for anybody who hasn't heard of Safe in Our World, we are the mental health charity for the video games world. So that means we are here for the industry. We're here to reach out to everybody who works within the industry to really come together and start looking after the teams and their talent. We're also here for gamers too, so we have lots of helplines, resources and support for gamers, but our overall mission really is to destigmatize mental health, to level up mental health with physical health, across the board. So in a nutshell, that's what Safe in Our World does. I think I'll have an opportunity a bit later to talk about some of the initiatives we've got, but that's what Safe in Our World is set up to do.
Thank you. As Chaya mentioned, I'm Alex. I'm head of marketing at the Multiplayer Group. We are multiplayer game developers, as the name implies, and we work across the industry with all the big publishers to develop AAA games. We work on co-dev and full dev projects as well. And if you need any more information, there's lots of information on our booth today as well.
Cool. Thank you. Sarah, can you provide an overview of the current state of mental health in the video game industry?
Yeah, sure. Thank you. Well, I'm going to be honest, I think it's pretty tough at the moment. I think there's a lot going on in our industry that's making it a bit of a tough place to work out. I'm sure many people are aware that this week there's been announcements of even more redundancies. And I think that is having a huge impact on everybody. Coupled with that, we're in an economic crisis. We've all got financial worries with everything costing so much more. So that has a massive impact on your mental health anyway. But I do think, particularly in our industry at this time, financial worries, job security is a big worry for everybody. Other than that, obviously going on at the moment, we've got countries at war, we've got political unrest. So, there's a lot of things just overall to be worried about at the moment. Outside of that, and probably more sort of industry focused, I think our industry still lacks inclusion and diversity. I don't think we're quite as inclusive and diverse as we would like to be. So I think that's something that's still an issue within our industry. The other one I'm just going to mention, I think, is probably there's still a bit of the public perception around video games and gamers is still a bit of an issue for us. I still think there's stigma attached to being a gamer, and video games themselves do get negative press, with gaming addiction, or kind of it does attract some negative press, which I think is probably a stressor for game developers. And probably leading on from that is the whole issue around toxic communities. We do still have a lot of issues around sort of hate speech and lots of toxicity within our communities, and I think just on that, leading back to game developers, if games are being rushed out or they're late, which I think a lot of games are running late at the moment, or they're rushed out with bugs, that can have a negative impact as well, because that can cause some issues. So I think for me, they're probably three of the biggest issues that I think are facing the industry at the moment. I don't know if Alex has got anything more to add at all.
Yeah, I think you're spot on. You've covered a lot there, which is a shame, but it's really important that we talk about that. And I think there's a stat that you guys gave out about how there's more people suffering with mental health issues in this industry than there
Yeah,
are in other
yeah, I can
industries.
give you that one. Yeah, that's a UK statistic. There was a couple of years ago now. I think they're probably due to run the same survey again. But if you work within the video games industry, the people surveyed, obviously, 38% said they live with anxiety, depression, or both. Where outside of our industry, it sits around 17%. So that is a clear indication that, you know, our industry does suffer more, I think, than some other industries.
Yeah.
Thank you. Sarah, what are some common mental health concerns or issues faced by professionals working in the industry, and how do these compare to other sectors?
Yeah. So I think a couple that are often spoken about in our industry, which we're all probably very familiar with, is crunch. So that's where people are asked to work ridiculously long hours for no extra pay, with no often not enough resources, and at the end of it, they're just left to recover. So crunch was new to me. I'm fairly new to the industry. I only joined 3 years ago. Before that, I worked in sport, and I hadn't heard of crunch before. And when I heard about it, I thought, how on earth has that been going for so long, with the industry thinking that that's an okay way to work? It doesn't work. There's evidence to prove that after week 2 of crunch, the productivity is way less than it was before. But anyway, there's crunch. That's still a massive issue for us. And what does crunch lead to? Burnout. Burnout is a massive issue within our industry. It's not always attributable to crunch. You know, people who don't crunch can still burn out. And I think, to answer the question with regard to our industry as opposed to outside, I think burnout is more prevalent in our industry because I think a lot of people who come in feel they've got their dream job. And I kind of do to a certain degree, because I love my job. So therefore I blur the lines between work and home because I love it. And I think a lot of developers do that. They're working on a fantastic game that they've always wanted to work on, and they sort of say, well, it doesn't matter. I'm working long hours, but it's kind of my hobby. I love it anyway. It's not good for you. You need to take time out. So I think burnout is a massive thing in our industry. And kind of on the back of that as well is presenteeism and leaveism. So people not taking time off. There's another UK statistic that says 50% of the people in the UK don't take their full allocation of annual leave. And we really need to do that. And the same, like if you're working from home, when you work when you're not well, it's easy, isn't it, to work when you're not well? You wouldn't do it in an office, you wouldn't go in, but you're at home, you grab your laptop, you sit in bed. So I think they, to me, are some of the biggest issues that we face in our industry. And you know, I'm sure other industries are similar with burnout, but definitely I think that dream job, you enjoy it so much you forget that you really need to take time out. I think they're the big ones for me.
Yeah, sounds spot on. Thank you.
Thank you. Alex, a question for you. Why did MPG choose to partner with Safe in Our World to become Level Up partners?
Yes, great question. So I first met Sarah and the Safe in Our World team at GDC back in March. So it was really amazing to meet with 3 women that were really aligned with our values. And I think we hit it off straight away, really. At the same time, we'd recently become Women in Games corporate ambassadors, and it kickstarted this really meaningful conversation within MPG around our diversity strategies and our wellbeing strategies, to make sure that when we start partnerships with these industry allies like Safe in Our World or Women in Games, it really means something, that it forms part of our wider business strategy. Because I think it can be all too easy for some marketing departments to sort of take on these partnerships, but then not necessarily do anything internally to make it actually mean anything or have any substance in real life. So it came at a really good time when we met Safe in Our World, and a group of us within MPG who were super passionate about our team's well-being and social responsibility in general came together to work out what that strategy would be. So we already knew that Safe in Our World were going to fit in really well with that. And I think it's almost a no-brainer, to be honest with you. They provide these amazing resources, and for a relatively small team, I was just blown away by what good quality the resources were as well. And they provide support for either my team or the people team to be able to disseminate that information internally, but also they've got a really great opportunity to have a voice in the industry, and we want to support that as well.
Thank you.
Another one for you, Alex. What are MPG doing to support their team with their mental and physical health?
Yeah, so as I mentioned, it is part of this wider strategy that we've been working on. But there are quite a few key things that we do around mental health specifically. So we have 24 mental health first aiders, which is an amazing skill for our teams to have. I think something that I value in particular is we don't do any crunch, which is something we're super dedicated to. But also we have a people team and a leadership team that are very approachable and genuinely care about the well-being of their team, which is something that I've never experienced in any place that I've worked at, to be honest with you. We also give them access to key tools like private medical insurance, an employee assistance program, and also Headspace app. So they have access to meditation tools and things like that. We give regular talks and speaker sessions, some training opportunities as well. And we've also implemented some things in the office at our headquarters in Nottingham, like a quiet room. So if people need to take a break and just go and sit peacefully, they can do. I think something that we are really aware of is that being a remote friendly company, we've got 380 people nearly around the world, and I think 90% of people are fully remote. So I think some people probably struggle with loneliness, and that is something that obviously has a huge effect on our mental health. So we're working on ways that we can try and combat that and support that. So things like regular online and in-person events, but also an entertainment allowance. So people have a pot of money every year that they can basically use to meet up with people in their team, whether that's in person or online, it's up to them. But just means that people have a bit more freedom to socialize in the way that suits them. And we also encourage people, if it suits them, to join a virtual coffees channel that we have on Slack. So it randomly pairs them up with other people in the business that want to do that. And it's just a really nice way to get to know people, but also take 15 minutes to sort of reset your brain a bit and not think about the code that you're working on or something that you've been focusing on really intently. So yeah.
Thank you. Sarah, in your experience, how has the video game industry evolved in terms of recognizing and addressing mental health issues among its workforce?
Brilliant, thank you. Just before I do answer that, I just want to say MPG are doing fantastic work. Honestly, you are a model partner. Honestly, it's so good, and I loved it when I remember you telling me this before, that you don't crunch. Nobody you work with, you don't accept that as a culture, and I think that's absolutely fantastic. Okay, how's the industry doing? I think we're getting there. I think a lot of companies are now really starting to take it seriously and looking after their teams and their talent. In a bizarre way, I think COVID probably helped, although it didn't help in that more and more people suffered with their mental health and loneliness. I think coming out of that, people suffered who maybe had never suffered before, and opened their eyes to the fact that a lot of people had a really tough time. I think people then working remotely became into focus because a lot of companies had never done remote working before. So I think all of that has made the conversation a little bit more normal than it was before. So I'm pleased to say that, you know, more and more companies are coming to us saying, you know, how can we help you? I think that whole working from home thing is a massive challenge, and it's been a real journey for people to be able to navigate those challenges, and to look out for each other. It's so much harder to look out for each other on, you know, on Teams and Zoom and Google Meet than it is in person. And, you know, I always say you can't see how people feel. So the only thing you can do is ask them. And I always say you have to ask twice, because if I said to you two today, how are you? You'd both say, yeah, I'm fine, thanks. And I said, no,
Yeah.
but seriously, how are you? And that's when you're more likely to get, you know, the real answer. So I think that's really important. I think the industry are slowly waking up to the fact that burn and churn is not a way to continue. You know, you just burn people out, and the turnover of staff within the industry has been horrendous, and that comes with obviously huge costs to re-recruit and retrain. And so I think the industry, like I say, are waking up to that. Sorry, I'm being a bit of a stats girl today, but another
It's great.
Deloitte stat from last year was that for every, you know, study shows that for every £1 you spend on your employees, you will get 5 back. In their, you know, commitment. You know, they're going to stay with you, they're going to feel supported, they're going to feel valued. So I think that speaks for itself. You know, it makes sense to look after your teams. They are your assets at the end of the day. Without your teams, you are nothing. I think one thing I'm really passionate about is compassionate leadership. I think people are understanding that you need to be nice to your team. I think, especially over the last few months, where a lot of companies increased their headcount, people were promoted. They weren't getting the right training, and I think that's had some issues. Where I think now we understand that, you know, we need to have compassionate leadership. You need to know how to trust your team, to look after your team, be there, you know, walk with them and find out what, you know, how you can help them, and be a wise leader. I think they've invested more in training, which is fantastic. We've put on a lot of training for the industry, which has been really well received, but you can't ever have too much training when it comes to looking after your teams. Something that I wanted to mention that Alex has already mentioned is employee assistance programs. They are being used more now, which is brilliant. They're a really cheap way, really, to offer your team sort of up to 6 counselling sessions a year, free of charge for them, and it's really important. But I would say on the back of that, if you have got one, please keep reminding your teams that you've got it, because people forget, and make sure they realise there's no stigma attached to it, and your employers won't know whether you've used it or not. They might know how many people have, but they won't know it's you. So I think finally, I'll just mention there, I also think the industry are realizing that it isn't just about that tick box of having a policy. You know, action gets traction from the top down. You need to be invested in looking after your teams, and I think that's coming through now. So yeah, I think in answer to your question, if I can remember what it was, we as an industry, we are slowly getting there, and it is you know, getting to be a much more supportive place to work.
Yeah, I agree. I think I'd be surprised if there were any organisations out there that didn't have an inkling that they should be supporting their team's mental health, but it doesn't mean that they act on it. And I'm noticing more and more people talking about it at the events that we go to. And you know, we very actively promote our well-being on our stand when we go to a show, which I think is probably how we first started our conversation at GDC. And we had so many people coming over saying, "Oh, that's great. You know, what can we do? You know, we do this at such and such company, and it's really nice to have those conversations." But yeah, I think you're right. The people are talking about it more freely as well now.
Just starting that conversation, and people are happy to have the conversation much more now. So definitely a good step in the right direction.
Yeah. Thank you. Sarah, back to you again. What specific programs, resources do you offer that have been successful in promoting mental health within the video game industry? Do you have an example of where you've seen positive change?
Yeah, sure. So as far as Safe in Our World is concerned, our big industry focused initiative, which MPG are a member of, is our Level Up campaign. And that's where, again, we reach out to anybody who works, or every company within the industry, to come together and really commit to taking seriously the mental health of their teams and their talent. So I think we've got over 160 partners at the moment. But it is an ongoing conversation with our partners. We don't just sign them up and then, hope that they get on with it. We check in with them regularly to make sure that they are still doing the few things that we ask for in our pledge to become a member. It's free of charge. I'd like to mention that. But we do expect that our companies, walk the walk rather than just talking about it. We've offered lots of training. One thing that's been really successful for us, which I don't think anybody else is doing, is global mental health first aid training. Obviously, you can get it in all the different countries, but a lot of companies who do have a global reach want everybody to sit on the same course and have the same training. So we're able to offer that, which has been great. We have offered some community manager training, which again is something that there really hadn't been much support for community managers. The role is reasonably new, and I think they're 24/7. They're on the front line, and they really needed supporting. So we've rolled out a lot of that. Some of the other things that we've looked into, just even things like menopause resources and training. These are things that weren't talked about before, but they are things that can have a huge impact on quite a number of people within your organization, whether that's people themselves or other people supporting people through menopause. So that's been something that's really been popular. Our talks around neurodiversity and welcoming neurodivergent people within to your organization and understanding what an absolute, it can really make a competitive edge to have neurodiverse people. So it really should be encouraged. I'm really, really passionate about that. We offer support and help and training on inclusion and diversity, because again, we must celebrate our differences, and we must offer more and more support to everybody, from whatever, whether they're from an underrepresented group or whatever. We should do whatever we can to make everybody, I don't think it's too much to ask that everybody comes to work, feels valued, and is able to add value and be part, be your true self. And we're still not quite there yet, but we are working with that. So the other thing that I'd say that's been really successful for us is our monthly themes. Every month we have a theme that we will do a panel on, we will put out resources on, and we'll offer training if we can. So some of the months that we've had before would be things like OCD, or financial well-being, or men's health, or we've got addiction and dependency. So we try and mix it up. It's not just your standard, stress awareness. We do mix it up so that over the 12 months, we cover a lot of different subjects that all relate to mental health. And the great thing is it gives our partners the more to talk about, because I think you might have a Slack channel that's that's dedicated to mental health, or Discord or whatever, but sometimes it dries up. And it's okay in May and October when it's mental health awareness months, but the rest of the months in June, well, actually June LGBTQ+, which is brilliant, but some of the other months you're like, where we've already got a lot of information that we're piling out to you, saying let's get the conversation going around this particular topic. So that's been really useful. Two quick examples on what has made a difference. Going back to neurodiversity, we ran a workshop once where a recruitment agency for video games came along, and they've actually gone back and changed the way they interview people to be more inclusive for neurodivergent people. They realised they were not doing enough to attract people with neurodiversity. So that was a really nice win for us. And just the other day, actually, a partner came to me, and this may be in a lot of companies already, but this was new to them to say, following being a Level Up partner, they've now started that mental health conversation with their employees at induction stage. So as soon as they're in, they're going through all the policies that you have to, when new people start, but there was a whole subject on mental health and letting them know who mental health first aiders were and do they need any support. And I thought that was really nice as well. So it's just those little wins that mean a lot to us, and really prove to us that what we do is really making a difference.
Yeah, and right back at you. You guys do an amazing job as well.
Thank you.
Thank you. So over to you, Alex. It seems like mental health support needs to form part of a wider wellbeing strategy. What else is MPG doing to look after their team?
Thank you. Yeah, absolutely. We think that it needs to be part of a wider strategy. So, as we mentioned, it's really important that we achieve this, because if we're not providing an environment that's equitable for everybody, then of course it's going to impact people's mental health. So this covers all areas, as Sarah just mentioned. It covers from recruitment and how we onboard people to policies that we want to implement, and also even things like what events we throw and how we throw them to make sure that they're accessible to everybody. And also, all of our business goals and objectives really are formed around being people first, but also sustainable. So sustainable in every sense of the word. So for the planet, but also financially, which is really important because people know that MPG is going to be here in 5 years' time, and they don't need to worry about taking out a mortgage or, all the things that are impacting the industry at the moment. That is just not something that we need to worry about here, which I'm so grateful for. But it's also not just about the culture within MPG. I think we recognise that it's important to do what we can to improve the industry as a whole. So that's why we do work with amazing allies like Safe in Our World or Women in Games. And we recently supported Gaming, which is an LGBTQ plus community as well. So we are, I'm not saying we're perfect. Everyone can continue to improve. But we're slowly introducing more and more allies that sort of back up our diversity and inclusion plans and wellbeing policies across the company, so that we can support the industry as a whole as well.
Thank you. And last question, Alex, what advice would you give to people watching this who might want to start a conversation in their organisation about mental health?
Yes, hopefully we've got some people watching today and we've piqued their interest a little bit. First and foremost, reach out to Safe in Our World. The toolkits that we've talked about are really straightforward and easy to use, and it's free, as Sarah mentioned, which is mind-blowing. But it really is a great way to get started. I'd say find some other people within your organisation that have similar ambitions. It's quite a big undertaking to implement something like this, and don't feel like you need to go it alone. And as I mentioned, speak to people like me and Sarah at industry events if you can get to them. There's plenty of free things online, like this exact Women in Games event is a perfect example of that. But there's lots of women-only spaces that I personally feel like are quite safe places to ask questions and get some advice. I think Women in Games have a Discord channel that's pretty active. So that's a great example. And I think, as Sarah mentioned this again, I personally feel like if you can get buy-in from your leadership team, that's a huge hurdle to get over, because it's a million times easier to implement cultural shifts sometimes in how we approach mental health if you've got the top disseminating and showing people how they should be behaving, and it makes it a lot easier to get buy-in from everybody else. So yeah, that would be my advice. But equally, please reach out to MPG if you want some advice. To me at MPG, my email is alexlambert@mpg.io, or you can pop a message in the chat box today and we've got some lovely people from our talent team you can speak to. But Sarah, did you have anything else that you
No,
might
not
give as
really. I
advice?
think you pretty much covered it. I would always recommend that you try and get somebody on a mental health first aid course if possible,
Yes.
to sort of lead on that. But it's small steps. You know, don't feel like you need to know all the answers. Just ask questions, and you know, if you have got anybody who is prepared and willing to share a personal story, I think that's always really, really useful within an industry, you know, to you know, just have that inspiration that other people have suffered as well, you know. So if you've got, you know, a few people together, if anybody's, you know, willing, on our website we've got lots of inspirational stories where people have been really honest about how they feel. And honestly, for me, nothing makes me feel better than to know I'm not on my own and that someone else feels the same as I do. But just get a few people together that are passionate. Start slowly, ask questions, and you'll be surprised how many people will want to be part of the conversation.
Yeah, that's a really good point. We have a really active Women in Games channel within our MPG Slack, and I was really taken aback by the stories that people told and how open they were prepared to be. And it really helped me in so many ways, not just around mental health, but around things like imposter syndrome and things like that.
You know, I was just going to mention that. Like, when I've had imposter syndrome for years, didn't know what it was. And once it was named, I was like, oh yeah. And then we do workshops on imposter syndrome, and we all just can go, yeah, I feel like that. And it makes you feel so much better. So yeah, 100%.
Yeah, find your team, find your people.
Yeah, find your crew. Yeah.
Great. Thank you, Chaya.
Thank you.
A special thank you to you both. Thank you so much. And thank you to everyone for listening. And we'll see you next time.
Thank
you.
you. Bye. Bye.